Hello and welcome, everybody. I am so glad to have you here today. I hope that it is so much prettier where you are today. I'll tell you, in Florida, we have really had some gloomy weather here. And I know it is January, and that's to be expected, but there is one bright light today, and that is having Stephanie Lee here from Host Agency Reviews. I just wanted to mention, we are recording this call and it will be placed on our YouTube channel and inside of your member portal. So you can go back and watch it again. If you have to bow out earlier, then you can go back and watch the replay. Scott should have it up hopefully within the next day or so. Before we begin, I wanted to first introduce Stephanie Lee. If you have not heard of Steph, she is the owner of Host Agency Reviews, which is an incredible resource for new and seasoned advisors. And before she dives into her presentation, I wanted to allow her to talk a little bit about Host Agency Week. It is the biggest event of the year. It is online, and there are so many great speakers, resources, offers that are available to you. So, Steph, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away and welcome, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Sheila. I'm so excited to be here. Those that are wondering, this is Fennec, my pup, who is always by my side in the office. It just so happens this time he's in the view cam, so that should be really exciting during today's presentation. But Host Week is coming up. It is happening in 2 weeks. It's always the last week in January. So it's January 27th, I think, through 31st this year. And like Sheila said, there is a ton of information within Host Week. It's all free and whether you're new or experienced, there's going to be something for you. So, kind of the general layout of Host Week is every day we open things up with a coffee spot, which is where you get to learn in depth. It's almost like a webinar. It's 45 minutes in depth on a certain company or their product. And so we start that off. That requires separate registration. And then there's also drawings for coffee gift cards, I think, for the first or like 15 people we draw it for each day. And then what we do is we move into our keynotes, which we've got great keynotes this year. We've got things on cybersecurity and how to keep your social media accounts safe from hacking. We've all heard those horror stories. We've got things on travel trends that are going on. We do a state of the host agency address every year, which kind of goes over host agencies, what's happening in that world, as well as trends we're seeing within the hosted advisor community. And a lot of that comes from our reports. Then what we do is we do consortia interviews and then or host agency interviews. And so there are about 15-minute slots where every consortia is asked the same questions and every host agency is asked the same questions, with the idea that this allows you to, as much as you can, compare apples to apples with the host agencies and how they're answering these different questions. I really love it because it gives you a sense of a host agency beyond what you see on their website and on their profile on host agency reviews. It's a lot more of an interactive way. And we also always have a fun question. And this year, I'm going to tell it to you ahead of time because it's really fun. It's, if you could sing a karaoke song to your advisor network, what would it be and why? And so they're always really fun, quirky answers that come out. And this year is, I think, one of my favorites. And then after those, we have, if you're not looking for a new host agency or a consortium, afterwards, we have what we call edges spots, which are education sessions. And there's a lot of great information on there, from sales to marketings to financials. Our Friday 15 on Friday will focus on legal issues, so people can ask their legal questions. So lots of great stuff. It's free to register, and you can do that by going to har.news/hostweek. Otherwise, on the site, you can, in the menu bar on the top, I think, I'm not sure what it's under, but one of the main titles under there, there'll be a host week page where you can register. So we
Well,
hope you
we'll
can join us.
we'll go ahead and post it and promote it inside of our Facebook group as well. So we'll include the link there.
Oh,
And
thanks,
also,
Sheila.
I wanted to mention too, if you guys have questions, just pop them into the chat And Steph, we can reserve them for later, or if you prefer to have me interject, I can do that as well. It's entirely up to you.
Let's have you interject and so we can get them answered right away.
Okay, great. And guys, I love it when you guys participate and you interact. And if you want to raise your hand and show your face on screen, that's good too. So, without further ado, go ahead and take it away, Steph.
Perfect. Okay. Is my screen showing here, Sheila?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I was telling her earlier, I was like, I haven't done this in Canva before, so this is all kind of new to me. So today we're going to chat on how to pick the conferences that are going to be best for your business because we all know that they're a significant commitment of not only your time, but also the resources it takes to get there. So here's a few things that you can do that'll make it so that you're getting the best ROI on things. And before we get started, what I wanted to do was ask everyone in the audience what is the most intimidating or the hardest thing for you about conferences? Is it you're overwhelmed when you go there and you don't know what to do? Is it that you're an introvert or you're really shy and you don't know anybody? So go ahead and type those in the comments and let me. Oh, here, I got to pull up the chat. Um, Type those in the comments. While we're waiting, I'll go ahead and share with you one of the hardest things for me during conferences is going to be I get so exhausted by the end of them, and that's what everyone should be doing in order to get your ROI on them. You should come away exhausted from the conferences that you're going to. So, kind of an agenda for today. Um, let's see, is we're going to talk about how to choose and find different events, how to maximize that ROI, and how to follow up afterwards. And then we'll do some Q&As there. And I see there's people don't like going by yourself and being an introvert. So we'll talk a little bit about that and we'll also talk about the best sessions to attend. So great. We are on the right track here. So, first thing is finding events. Now, that can be challenging if you're, especially if you're new to the industry. Those of us that have been in it for, like, I've been in it for 20 years now, and you kind of know what the events are within the industry. But for those that are newer, one of the things, this right here is our travel industry conferences and events calendar. There's usually around 100, different events in here. Some are in person, some are virtual, but you can filter by your topic, your niche, if it's virtual or in person. If it's invite only, which examples of that would be like your host agency might be hosting something for their network or your consortia for their network, or a supplier might be putting on a dinner in your city, but it's invite only, things along those lines. So this is the QR code here, or you can go to har.news/events and then you can check that out. But that's a great place to kind of figure out what you're looking for there. And let's see, now we want to look at how are we going to pick events because I know that that's kind of an issue. There's a lot of things out there. It used to be 20 years ago, there was just a handful of events, so it wasn't very difficult. And fast forward to now, everyone is putting on events. Suppliers are putting on events. We've got the trade magazines putting on events. We've got technology companies putting on events, besides the hosts and the consortia. So it gets a little bit intense within there. But let's go into picking the events. So, some things you should think about is your budget for the events because you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck when it's more local or easier for you to get to versus, for instance, I think there was a travel agent forum. It was the owners forum that was in the Azores or something. Uh, this fall. That is going to be a lot more difficult to get to. It's going to cost a lot more. It's going to take a lot more of your time because you're going to need to take connections versus, say, MLTU. Well, not MLTU. It's Delta Vacations University now. But that used to be in Minneapolis every year. And I'm from Minneapolis. And it was literally 3/4 of a mile from my house. And so it was a no-brainer for me to go. I used to bike down to it every year. I loved it. Now they kind of rotate and it's in Georgia and it comes back to Minneapolis every now and again. But when you're planning for it, it's more than just the fee that the organizer might be charging. It's things like beyond the admission, you're going to be looking at lodging. How much is that going to cost? the ground transport. Are you going to have to rent a car because it's really far away from the airport, or are there going to be easy shuttles? Las Vegas is a great example. It's usually pretty inexpensive to fly into. It's really easy in terms of ground transport, whether you do paid or you're doing, if you're taking public transit to get downtown on the strip. You're going to think about the airfare. Again, I talked about this before, but if you're having to go somewhere, if it's a harder to reach destination, that's really cool in some senses, but it also makes it so it's going to be more expensive and it's going to eat up a lot more of your time. You might have to have pre and post nights that you wouldn't have to other places. Thinking about clothing, if there's special clothing that you're going to need, if it's a adventure based one and you've never been on something adventurous and you're going to have to buy hiking pants and all sorts of things, something to think about, as well as the food today. How much of the food is included each day? Do they give you free breakfast? Are you going to have to go out for breakfast every day? Is lunch included? That sort of a thing. And when we're thinking about flight schedules, one thing that I've learned through the years is that with the flight schedules, oftentimes I'm from Minneapolis, so oftentimes there's direct flights, and I know not everybody has that luxury. So another thing you'll wanna consider is looking at the flight schedules from your home airport to wherever the conference is going to be, because if the conference gets out, say, on the Wednesday, and it ends at 12 p.m., but the last flight out to make it to your city back home is gonna be at 2 p.m. That's gonna be a very, very tight fit for you to get to the airport in time, and so you'll probably have to stay an extra night. So thinking about those ahead of time when you're looking at them can really be helpful. And in terms of the, whoops, hold on. What did I do? Whoops. Okay, here we go. Budget. Okay. So the other thing to think about too, something that's been really popular. I don't know if you've noticed this, Sheila, but there's always theme nights at these events coming up. And so it'll be like, roaring 20s or the
Oh,
all
yeah.
white night. Like they're always having these, which are great for pictures and cute. And I totally get them. But I'm also kind of like, I don't really ever wear red or whatever. Now I have to buy a whole outfit, and people are oftentimes throwing away these, throwaway outfits or roaring 20 outfits, things like that. So that's something to consider too, is if you need to get something for theme nights. Or I've never been to Virtuoso Travel Week because I'm about as far from luxury as you can be. But anyone that's attended knows there are wardrobe changes multiple times a day if you're taking it seriously. And so that is something to think about. A lot
And
more expensive.
yes, and lots of handbags and heels and definitely wardrobe changes. I had the pleasure of attending it this year or this past year, and it truly was something else. I've
It's an
never.
experience.
It is an experience. It is a week long experience.
Yep, exactly. And so thinking about all of those things, one of the things too that I've done in the past is you can find a travel buddy to share a room with you. I know someone in the comments mentioned, Amy mentioned she doesn't like going by herself to the conferences, even though she's not an introvert. A nice thing to do is to just find a travel buddy to go with that can share the room with you, and that halves the cost, which is really nice. Because the truth of the matter is, you're rarely in your room during a conference. And so, even if you like your personal space, you're probably going to be okay because your paths aren't going to cross that much. The other thing you can do is when looking at events and kind of thinking about it is this going to be a 2-for-1 for you? Can you go to the conference, and is it in a destination that you are selling or that you would like to sell, so that you can add on different site inspections, things along those lines? So let's see. The other thing I wanted to point out up here is this is a screenshot of our travel expenses article, because this is often a question people ask on, can I write this off or not for my conferences? Typically you can, but if you use this QR code or go to har.news/expenses, you'll be able to find the article that'll give you a lot of different information, because there are some specific things about cruises in terms of tax write-offs that a lot of advisors don't know. I will say the chances of the IRS actually coming after you and saying that cruises under whatever statute can only be if they're a US flagged and all sorts of other things, that's very, very rare, but worth taking a look at and knowing. So, when we're looking at the conference topics, things that we're looking at, because it can be overwhelming with a lot of conference topics. There's a lot to go to, sometimes two at the same time, and you're not sure which one to go to. So, first, looking when you're choosing your event and seeing what are the sessions and what topics of interest are there for me. There's also often experiential experiences that are available pre or post or even during the event. Like they might be able to do, say, I went to an Adventure Travel Trade Association event in Mexico called Adventure Travel Mexico. And they had a full day of adventure, they call it, where you get to go out and experience things. They had pre and post FAMs. So it really made the trip worth it because the actual conference itself was a day and a half or 2 days, and I never would have probably flown all the way down for a day and a half conference, but because of all the experiential experiences available to me, and that is not just making it so you can sell to your clients better and know this, it also gives you a lot of social proof and marketing materials for the future. So those are things to consider. Um, the other thing is if there's going to be a broad focus at this conference or if it's very laser focused. Virtuoso Travel Week is a perfect example, very focused on luxury. It's great for luxury advisors. If you're not a luxury advisor, it's not going to be a good fit for you. The last thing that I would look at is going to be who is going to be at these events. Because one of the big things about attending events is you should be networking with other advisors, with suppliers, people in the industry, because that's really what's going to grow your career. You need to be networking for your clients, but also on the business to business side. So take a look at what vendors are going to be there if there's going to be a trade show. Take a look at the presenters. Is there someone that you've always been wanting to meet and wanted to put a face to the name with them so that hopefully maybe they'll say you were interested in meeting someone from HAR because you were hoping to contribute to some of our articles on the site in the future. That's a great example of planning ahead and looking at who's there. In terms of other attendees, what are the other attendees like? Are they all going to be new advisors? Are they going to be luxury focused? Weighing all these things out. And then who is the event host? So, if you, again, are maybe new to your host agency, going to the host agency's event is like their annual conference is a great idea because one, it allows you to get to know other advisors within your network. But two, you're getting to meet the support team, the people that you've been emailing back and forth with. And those types of relationships come in super, super handy when you have things that are going on. We all know it's a lot easier to recall people that you've met in real life and that you've had experiences with than it is someone that you've just had an email with. And another great example is this is Clara was just on the call before this with Travel Industry Solutions. And I was like, I don't think we've met. Have we, Clara? And then she said, I sent you the email saying my mom had vasculitis, which is a chronic illness that I have and super rare. And so I was like, oh my God, I totally remember you. But not everybody has that random rare illness that they can, email over and help someone remember them by. So those are some ideas to think about when you're choosing your conference. And now that you have picked your event, now it's time to start thinking about the prep work that you need to do before the trip, because that is key, especially when you're new. When I first started in the industry, I spent a lot more time before shows really planning things out and getting to know who was going to be speaking, what the topics were, seeing the vendors. As you become more experienced, you're not going to have to prep as much. But some of the things to think about is one, how are you going to do like destination photos for marketing for yourself? Because a lot of times we get to go to really beautiful destinations as part of our conferences, which is a perk of the industry, of course. And so you need to kind of think of, for instance, I went to the Galapagos and I knew that there would be a lot of really beautiful underwater photos that I would be taking. And in the past, I've taken some photos underwater, but the case I had wasn't very good. And I knew we'd be in the water almost every day. And so I really wanted to make sure that I had a case that I could like just press the button instead of just the plastic pouch where you're having to push it and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I made sure to purchase a like waterproof case that was hard that had a button that would push the button on my phone for me, but it made it so I was gonna be wearing gloves because the water would be a little cold, that it would be really easy to do things like that. So, uh, some of the other things you might wanna think about, are there photos with some vendors that you might wanna take for social proof that if you sell a lot of, say, celebrity cruise lines, making sure to get a photo at their booth. If there's networking opportunities available to you, I would talk to your host agency if they are going to be at the show, and see what they have going on. Also see if there's any vendors of theirs, because sometimes what happens is vendors will put on cocktails, but they're private cocktails and they're kind of invite only. And you have to be in the know in order to get those, but that's hard for newbies. So one thing you can do is you can reach out to your consortium if you're an independent advisor or your host agency and just see if they know of any vendors that are going to be putting on any networking events that you would be able to attend. Um, let's see. So those are kind of tangible things you can do beforehand is planning for taking those marketing photos, doing social proof with the different vendors, things along those lines, and making sure that if there's people you want to network with, that you're writing down and figuring out a game plan for that. Some of the intangibles, though, are when you're going to a conference, one of the big things, because a lot of us work from home, is the inspiration that you get. I don't know, people can maybe write in the comments if they've experienced this at events, but sometimes, it gets kind of boring day in, day out. You're in front of your computer doing the same thing. And when you get to go to a conference, it can really liven things up, like hearing ideas from other people, being in a new environment, sharing these experiences with others that are also passionate about travel. That can make it so you come back really inspired about your job again. So I always like with the team here at Host Agency Reviews, we always try to get them out to at least 1 or 2 shows a year or events so that even though Mary, who does a lot of our article writing here, she's not an advisor, but we send her to these events so she can meet new people and that she gets really invigorated by being able to go out there, go to new destinations. Other intangibles people don't think about is there is, like I said earlier, a lot of value in you going and having face to face interactions with people versus having it on Zoom. There's a total difference. And those shared experiences, especially another example here is the adventure travel trade, the APMEX that I went to. I was in a whitewater rafting trip with let's see, Jason Holland, which some of you may know. Um, and there was a writer from Travel Age West, and our boat flipped. This isn't a great story, but our boat flipped over and the raft flipped over and some people got caught underneath it and were like pushing and I could feel them pushing. And so it's funny in hindsight to tell, but it's bonded us forever, like I was like, "Oh my god, people are going to die underneath my feet." Those types of experiences, anytime you travel with anyone and have great experiences can really bond you. So make sure to think about that when you're thinking about costs and things like that. And then just a lot of the new friendships. So all these pictures are from different events that I've attended through the years. I've made so many great friends, even people I haven't seen for say 10 years. You just very much remember them from all the experiences you've had together. So let's see, there we go. We have created something at HAR. It's honestly nothing special, but it's something you can think out on your own. But a lot of times when we're thinking about which conferences we're going to, we're just doing it in our head. Sometimes it's nice to be able to print something out and just do some brainstorming. So if you go to har.news/conference, or you can scan the QR code, that will allow you to download this conference planning sheet, which will really help clarify what your priorities are and help you figure out which one you want to go to. So, um, there should be kind of a mixture of each thing when you're stating your goals. So, one should be education. You want to get business development. How can you grow your business? What are some new ideas to do things? You want to get product knowledge. You want to get destination knowledge. All those are in there. As you maybe become more experienced, this becomes less because a lot of travel advisors are pretty well traveled, know the destinations and products well. But you should have some mixture of education, of networking. And this is, again, it's going to be peer to peer networking. It's going to be networking with those vendors, and it's going to be networking with the host of the events. Um, the other thing you want to make sure is a priority within there is how can you use this event for marketing and social proof? Is there a way to do it? There was a host agency that had their annual conference this year, and it was, I think, like 2 hours out of a major city, and it's not really in a destination hub by any means. And so that would be a lower priority for me personally, because there's not going to be any marketing or social proof for the actual destination. That destination isn't going to give me anything. And so maybe I would wait until the following year to go to the host agency's annual conference when it's in a spot that might be a better fit for me.
So I want to expand on that a little bit, Stephanie. So just to
Yeah.
give everybody some context is, for instance, if your conference is in New Orleans, um, the marketing and social proof isn't just gathered at the event itself, like, hey, I'm educating myself, look at me, here I am. Use it as an opportunity to experience local cuisine and share about that, through your social channels. Look up other hotels that are in the
Mhm.
area that would be a good fit for your customers, and take pictures of yourself there. It's kind of like I always tell people, you may not be able to afford to stay at the Four Seasons. You're staying down the street at the Motel 6, but it doesn't mean you can't go to the Four Seasons and take pictures of yourself there and show the hotel property. So when you think about the destination of the conference, think beyond the social proof of the conference itself, but
Yep.
literally experiencing stuff in that area as well as other hotel properties.
Exactly. And that all comes down to, again, oops, making sure you're planning ahead, because then you can drop in and see if the hotel or the resort is going to let you in. But a lot of times they need a heads up to make sure that there's going to be a room open and a room cleaned for you that you can go see. So it's always important, again, especially when you're newer, to plan ahead on these things.
And also planning ahead with setting up, and I don't know if you're going to get to this, so you can tell me to stop, but setting up appointments in advance with suppliers that you want to meet with.
Yes.
And are you going to be covering that, or you want me to
Yes.
expand on that?
Yep. We'll go over that in just, well, yeah. How will we make these goals happen?
Oh,
So we're talking about, oops, I went the wrong way. How did this happen? Okay. So here's my piece of unsolicited advice for everybody. And this was something I learned very, very early on when I got started in the travel industry. And that is, conferences are not meant to be clicky. You need to go out there and meet new friends. And so, one of the things that, because Amy, like you, when I first started going to events, one, I was like in my mid 20s. So I was like very, very young and not super business savvy. So everything was kind of like, woo to me. And I was super intimidated. But I would sit down at a table and no one would know each other and no one was talking. And that was before cell phones were common. So it was super awkward. Now at least people are staring at phones. But one thing I started doing very early on in the beginning was just introducing myself to the people around who was sitting by me who I wasn't talking to, because I didn't know anyone at any of these conferences. So I would introduce myself, be really inclusive, and bring other people in the table into the conversation. Because, Amy, we are not the only ones, and the introverts that are saying they're nervous because of it, we are not the only ones sitting at that table thinking this is like, I don't know anybody. This is so awkward. And so try to be that person that is going to bring in others and get to know them. I cannot tell you how many of the relationships I built that way have come back to me tenfold through the years. And I wasn't even doing it for that reason. I was doing it because I felt uncomfortable. So I would encourage people, sit at a table where you don't know anyone. And if you need to, like, you and a friend traveled together, or the person you're sharing a room with, you two can sit down at the table, but also try to include other people, because it's not as intimidating as you think. We are all in the exact same industry. We all love travel. So it's easy to start a conversation. You can ask someone about, like, what was your last trip? Or what's your favorite destination? Or what do you have planned next? Most people are going to have an answer for that. And it's a pretty safe question at a travel industry event. Um, Another example of this would be, so sometimes we don't usually have booths at shows, but every once in a while we'll have one when they comp us for speaking. And we were at a booth once, manning our booth, and someone came up, one of our readers came up, and she gave like this really beautiful card she wrote to us and like a gift. It was like a beautiful candle from someone locally made in her town. And those types of things, planning ahead to actually do that is not something I've ever done, but I still remember that advisor to the day. So things like that can make a huge difference in building relationships. And it's not that you need to buy anything, even bringing a card and just saying, I've sold so much of your product. I love your destination. Thank you so much. Um, so let's see. The other thing that you'll want to do too, because when you're asking people questions, some people will ask questions back to you, which may be a surprise. And so you will want to make sure to have your elevator pitch ready. So know what type of travel you sell, whatever your spiel is going to be, have that prepared because you'll probably be saying that a lot during the conference. Um, let's see. Oh, I see there's a I like Amy's comment. I will honestly talk to everyone I know, so I will be fine. That's awesome. Um, so speaking of our elevator pitch, this is Mary wrote up this kind of step-by-step guide on how to come up with your elevator pitch. It's a bit of a workshop, if you will, but you can go to har.news/elevator to get more information on there. But you're going to meet a lot of people, or you should. And if you're not, you're doing something wrong. So you want to get people's business cards, whether that's the physical business cards or the electronic business cards. You want to write notes on the person to help you remember them. I don't know if anyone else does this, but I meet so many people during conferences, it's really hard for me to remember everyone. And so immediately after I meet them, if I'm either scanning their card or if I have a physical card, I'll put something down to help me remember, what the conversation we had, or I'll be like, they had the flannel shirt with the big curly hair, whatever it is that helps me remember them. And that triggers something after the conference when I'm kind of decompressing and going through my business cards. So, also making notes on any follow ups when you've talked with someone and you say, "Oh yeah, like I'll make sure to send you over." Maybe you met your BDM and they don't have your contact information. Make sure to put a note on there that follow up and make sure to send them an email because they don't have you in their database or whatever it is. All right, so now we're working on building out our schedule. So a lot of the conferences may have apps now that you can easily build out which sessions you want to go to. You want to make sure to add these to your calendar. And then if you're doing this manually, remember that there's the time zone difference because I did not do this once and I was so confused. So remember that if you're on Eastern time and it's going to be in Las Vegas, that you're not putting it on Eastern time on your calendar, that you're putting it on whatever Las Vegas time is. And that can either be that you already make the time adjustment in your calendar or when you're putting the time in, you change the time zone. I like to do that because that way it automatically changes it for me and I don't get confused. Um, and then when you're looking at your schedule, now you'll be able to see really visually what you have for open slots. So, is there time that you might be able to schedule a meeting? Maybe you wanted to meet up with another advisor that you met earlier in the conference that specializes in the same thing you do or is tackling the same problems you are and you want to brainstorm over lunch. So that's why it's nice to have the schedule done ahead of time so that you can see where the holes are and fill those in as needed. And one of the things is try to attend as many of the events as possible. You are going to be tired by the end of it. And again, to get that ROI, try to attend as many as possible because there's just so many great opportunities like serendipity where you meet people through the years that I would hate for anyone to miss out on that. Oh, okay. So, I love this. I'm a visual person. I take a picture of everyone I meet with at the conference. Oh, that's awesome. I love that. My parents do that too. My parents are in the industry and they're constantly sending me pictures like, Steph, this person says hi. And I'm just like, okay, hello.
You know, a really cool thing that I saw at GTM this year is we were a supplier exhibitor at GTM East. And by the way, that is a conference that has 5 minute, it's like a speed dating conference, and it goes
Yep.
over 3 days. And you do have to qualify for it. But I met with one advisor and she had set up her phone and she had lav mics for
Oh,
herself
wow.
for the supplier. So she recorded every single 5 minute session so that she could remember what she talked about with those suppliers and put a face with the name. And I thought that that was pretty clever.
Yeah. Wow. That definitely makes her stand out. That's fantastic. Now, one of the things too, we'll talk logistics, is you do not want to forget your business cards, whether again that is going to be a physical business card or it's going to be making it on your phone, like having it on your phone so you can electronically pass it to someone. You want to make sure you have I have a downloaded a business card app on my phone where I can scan business cards really easily and it takes all the information and puts it into my phone. So download that ahead of time if you can and figure out how to work it. Uh, Comfy shoes, very, very important, although probably less important at Virtuoso Travel Week. Fashion is more important there. But for me, comfy
No,
shoes,
actually, that's not true. Everybody carries comfy shoes with them in their bag.
but okay, that's hysterical.
And then they switch them out.
Yeah, comfy shoes is so important. I wore a lot more high heels when I was younger, and then my feet started
Yeah,
being
me
like,
too.
this is not working for me." And so but I used to, like, change out shoes, and now I'm like, "I'm just buying practical shoes."
Me too.
And I will say, though, it is worth investing in a pair of nice, like, comfortable business shoes, like black ones or whatever that you can wear everywhere. Like I think I spent like $150 or 200 on mine, and I just wear them all the time and they're so comfortable. I've not regretted it once. So we have our business card app, and then we are talking about clothes for the conference. We already talked about if you're doing like adventures and buying adventure clothes, dressing up if you need the white knight need all clothes. But there's other things like very often, it is very cold in those conference rooms, and I get cold so easily, and so always making sure to bring sweaters or different things that you can put on when it's freezing out. Some of, the events often have an outdoor reception, so making sure that you have warm clothes for that, even if you intend never to step outside during your trip, you may end up there for one of the receptions. Or there'll be activities. I know a lot of conferences now will do things like they'll have yoga in the morning or they'll have a like a hit session in the afternoon for working out if people want to. So making sure you look at the schedule, pack anything that you might want to do. And then if you are going to be doing a lot of walking, Vegas is pretty much, I think, the only example I can think of here where sometimes, like the MGM Grand, if you're staying there and you have to go to their conference center, I swear the walk for me was like a mile and a half.
It is, I think, a mile. I think it's 5 miles.
I I I feel like they put me in the furthest away room one year.
I
I was
know,
just like, I
I
have to
know,
leave like 20 minutes early or 25 minutes early to get to the conference center.
I know. I'm not looking forward to it. I have to go 3 times this year.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so here's my little secret for starting to enjoy Vegas because I didn't used to enjoy it. I've maxed out all of this, but what I started doing was going to they have their players clubs. So I would just sign up to get the free money and then I would play the penny slots. And Sheila, I have won like $900. I'm like $900 ahead, maybe even like over $1,000 through the years. It's it's pretty sweet, but now I've hit almost every casino on the strip, and so I have very few that I can still get into and get, like, the free money, but that's, like, a fun thing to do if you have nothing to do.
Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah, so that's pretty great. Last thing is don't forget to set up a LinkedIn profile since we are doing business to business networking. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile set up, or if you haven't spruced it up in a while, make sure to check that out before you go to the show so that when people are connecting with you afterwards, they're getting the best and most up to date impression of you. Okay, here's our post game plan. You're gonna be exhausted if you're anything like me after these conferences. I sometimes fall asleep before the plane is even taken off. So, you wanna do your card organizing, at the airport while you're waiting for it, on the plane ride home if you're able to stay awake for it. Those are great times to do it because I think we've all run into that problem where you have the greatest idea like, "Oh, I'm gonna" for instance, my Galapagos trip, "Oh, I'm gonna take pictures and I'll make sure to post things and I'll remember all of this stuff." And I didn't do it right away, and 2 years later, it's still not done. So, make sure that you are connecting with people on LinkedIn when you get their business cards, that you are writing any notes to people that you needed to, follow-ups that were done that and that could be the notes in your app or the notes on the person's business card to help you. And then if they are in your app, making sure to put the right tag for them. I'll tag them with things like, 2025 GTM East so that if I can't remember the person, I can remember that they were at that event, and I'll also tag it with like, "Oh, it's a vendor," or, um, let's see, what are some other things I put in there? Like, I'll put if it's a vendor, and then I'll put, like, specifically cruise, or if it's an advisor or a technology company. That way I can, like, easily look it up if I only remember a small bit of the person I'm trying to find, I can filter it out through tags. Um, let's see. In emails, when you're following up via emails to people, try not to make them generic, which we're all in travel and sales and relationships. So this should be just general information we're all aware of, but making sure they're as personalized as possible so that the person can remember you, because not everybody is going to be as organized as you before the conference, and they may not have written notes and everything's a blur to them. If you can put your picture in the footer of your email, even if you don't normally, do it for when you're responding and reaching out to people from the conference so that they at least have a visual of what you look like. And that can be really, really helpful. So these are kind of the big tips here. And this is just another call out for Host Week. You can register. There's the URL and the QR code, full of fun information. And then I don't see any questions in the. Oh yeah, Fort Lauderdale. They are so cold there. Everything in Florida, it's like they decide to make up for the hot weather outside by keeping it Minnesota cold inside, is what I found.
Honestly, I
Um,
think that the best thing to do from year to year for conferences is to kind of mix it up a little bit. That's my personal opinion. I personally find that you get a lot of the same speakers across many of the conferences.
mhm.
And so, understand what your goal is before you choose multiple conferences in the same year that often have the same speakers or topics. So mixing it up a little bit with your host agency's conference or your consortia's conference, and then maybe going to a more specialized conference. So if you are specialized in weddings or adventure travel, taking a look at some of those conferences, as well as conferences that are hosted not by the host agencies or the consortia, but maybe, like the travel agent forum events or some of the publication events. So just think through that very carefully when you are coming up with your budget and thinking
Mhm.
about your goals and who you really do want to connect with and what you want to learn. Some of the smaller conferences will not have some of those larger vendors there. They're more obscure vendors.
Yep.
Even your local ASTA chapter events will have some of these smaller vendors that you've never heard of before that offer incredible services. And then finally is making sure, especially if you're new or you're looking to expand into a particular product line or destination, is really setting, not just setting up appointments with those representatives, but before you go, bringing to the table what your business plan is for penetrating those markets so that they can be a sounding board for you, what your business goals are, and what you believe you can contribute to their product or their offering. Because a lot of times that will lead to future benefits like co-marketing dollars, or having them send you to events that are local where they leverage travel
Yep.
advisors to represent their product, and then you get to keep a lot of the leads. So there's so much more to it. I think this is an amazing starting point. Have a plan. That is the first step. I wholeheartedly agree with you, Steph, is if you're going to choose a destination, choose wisely and think about how you can leverage your time in that destination.
Mhm.
And if it is a smaller, more obscure destination, and I was, a little bit surprised. I've been a little bit surprised at some of the destinations that have been chosen overseas that really are, you have fewer, customers who want to go to those destinations.
I like you trying to think of like, um, no one wants to go to them. Why are we going there? Is
Right.
essentially what we're
Nobody wants to go there. I've had one request in 10 years for this destination type of thing. So, yeah, I think, definitely mixing it up a little bit, so that you are exposed to a
Mhm.
lot of new ideas and new suppliers and new opportunities. And you don't get stuck in that cycle of just hanging out with your friends that you've made over the years, going that all go to that one particular conference, because you end up spending most of your time, and I see this a lot, just socializing with your same 10 people in your group. So I like that you sat at tables where you didn't know anybody and you struck up a conversation. I think that's excellent advice.
Yeah, the other thing, like, with choosing the different because I mean, I repeated many, many conferences through the years, but I always like to try out new ones because each of them has a different kind of culture and flavor, and, some and that's not something that's gonna be on their website. It's not gonna say, like, this one is, more focused on newbies and people that, um newbies and maybe their sales aren't as
Mhm.
high as you might find at other conferences. They're not
Mhm.
going to put that on there, but that's stuff that you pick up through the years as you've gone to a bunch of conferences. And then also like the reason I like it is you pick up all sorts of new ideas, and while you're probably not going to be throwing a conference, you might like the graphic design that they did for their map, and maybe you want to use that in your itineraries for your clients. All sorts of weird things. So I always think it's variety is the spice of life, and that's why it's also great to get to different conferences.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Um,
Yeah, well, okay, so is my screen still showing the thank you?
it is,
Okay.
yes.
So I also wanted to give a little shout out. All of you are obviously using Sheila's product here since you're in her Facebook group. So we would love it. She has a profile on Host Agency Reviews Tech List, which if you didn't know, we launched maybe like 3 or 4 months ago. And we would love to hear about what your experiences are with it. So if you want to scan the QR code, or you can go to har.news/tech. You'll find Travel Industry Solutions at the very top, and you can leave a review for her there.
Well, thank you so much for the plug. I really appreciate
Of
it.
course.
Well, I appreciate your time today. Again, everybody, this is recorded. We will post it within the next day or so. I really encourage you to go to the Host Agency Reviews website and look at all of their amazing resources. that they have available. And of course, don't forget to give TIS a review. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks so much for having me on, Sheila.
Bye bye.